Lakshminadasamaarambham Nadayamunamadhyamam Asmadacharyaparyandam Vande Guruparambaram. வையகம்யன் பொய்கை பூதம் பேயாழ்வார் மல்ஷேர்கோன் மகிழ்மாறன் மதுரகவி பொய்யில் புகழ் கோழியர்கோன் விட்டு சித்தன் பூங்கோதை தொண்டரடிப் பொடிப்பானாழ்வார் ஐயன் அருள் கலியன் எத்திராசர் தம்மோடு இருவர் ஓர் ஒருவர் அவர்தாம் செய்த துய்ய தமிழ் 24 பாட்டின் தொகை 4000 அடியோங்கள் வாழ்வே. நமஸ்காரம். இந்த தை மாசம் செஷனில் ஆக்சுவலி மாசி பிறந்திருக்கு, பட் டெக்னிக்கலி தை மாச செஷன் இது ஷெட்யூல் பண்ணியிருந்தோம். தை மாச செஷனில் we are going to talk of Anubhavam of two very interesting people in the Vaishnava Sampradayam. One is Koorathazhwan, ஆறு கிடையாது, Koorathazhwan, then Thirumazhisai ஆழ்வார். ஸோ இதில் ஆனால் இவருக்கும் ஆண் வரும், பிரான்னு ஒரு பேர் வரும், திருமிசை ஆழ்க்கும், Koorathazhwanக்கும் வந்து Koorathazhwan வரும். ரெண்டு பேரும் கனெக்டடா அப்படின்னா வைஷ்ணவ சம்பிரதாய கனெக்ஷன் இருக்கே தவிர சமகாலத்தவர் கிடையாது. ஸோ முதல்ல let's look at Koorathazhwan. Koorathazhwan, and as the name says, he belongs to a place called Kooram. Kooram is about 10-15 minutes drive from Kanchipuram, today's Kanchipuram, a small village. And Koorathazhwan belongs to a family of wealthy landlords. And Koorathazhwan and their family is known for enormous amount of philanthropy. Their house is always open for people to eat food, and anybody can walk in and ask for anything, and all their wishes will be granted. And completely devoted, obviously, to Perandevi Tayar and Varadaraja Perumal in Kanchipuram. As days goes by, Koorathazhwan is married to Andal. His Patni's Devi's name is Andal. Andal is even more devout. He is Sri Vaishnava and a human. So together, they were performing all the Kaingaryams to Perandevi Tayar, Varadaraja Perumal, and continuing the philanthropy. They were so rich that if Koorathazhwan closes the door and the night after all the day's work is over, the bell sound in the door will be heard in Kanchipuram. And that was his richness in terms of the size of door, size of bell, and all that is an indication. So one fine evening, suddenly a butter from Perumal Koil lands in his house, knocks the door. And Koorathazhwan opens up and says, see, your bell sound is heard so well, and I had a dream of Perandevi Tayar and Perumal mentioning about your doorbell noise in their discussion. So Koorathazhwan decides that the wealth is so much that it's even taking note of Perumal and Tayar that not my Kaingaryam, and immediately relinquishes his wealth instantly. And that is his greatness. Earlier, when Bhagavad Ramanuja was in Kanchipuram, Koorathazhwan and Andal used to perform service to Bhagavad Ramanuja. By that time, Ramanuja has moved to Srirangam. So he relinquishes all the wealth, gives it all to the people, and Sri Andal and Koorathazhwan take a walk all the way from Kanchipuram to Srirangam to go and surrender Bhagavad Ramanuja. Bhagavad Ramanuja is so happy to accept Koorathazhwan as his disciple, and they continue their work on various aspects of Sampradayam and also Kovil administration in Srirangam Kovil. Now, this is just one part of it. While we are talking about the wealth of Koorathazhwan, he is also a very knowledgeable person in Sampradayam. He was able to do a lot of work and all that. And dedicated soul, a man with so much of wealth, is completely humble and very down to earth, and offers complete surrender to Bhagavad Ramanuja and Kaingaryam to Ramanuja and Sampradayam. So there are many aspects in Sri Koorathazhwan's Charitram to exemplify that humility and his knowledge in many places. One such thing is when Bhagavad Ramanuja was kind of fine-tuning the administration, one particular person who was governing one part of, I think, the treasury, the Bandaram or Tayar Sannadhi, one of these I have to validate, was refusing to give the control to Bhagavad Ramanuja. So Bhagavad Ramanuja tried many aspects explaining why he has to do. Even today, the Kovil Ozhugu, the book called Kovil Ozhugu, which completely defines what has to be done, how the temple has to be administered in Srirangam, was given by Bhagavad Ramanuja. So when he was trying to do all this, one person was refusing to give. So he waited for his time, tried to explain and all that, it didn't happen. That person's mother passed away. So obviously all those first 12-13 days karyams will be happening. On that day, Koorathazhwan offers to do something unimaginable. He goes and offers himself as a 12th day Savandi Brahmana. Now we all know what a 70 Brahmana is. On the 12th day, we treat that person as the departed Atma itself and treat as and give every food and respects on that day. But the outside of this is this 70 Brahmana is not supposed to take part in any good karyam for the next 1 year till the next Tithi comes in. Koorathazhwan, a man with so much of wealth and knowledge, offers to himself as to go as a 70 Brahmana to that person's house because on the 12th day after performing that, host has to ask, what do you need? And Koorathazhwan uses that time to get control of the keys of all those areas that he was doing. That was his dedication to Ramanuja Kaingarya and to Sampradayam to fulfill Ramanuja's wishes. A great, knowledgeable person, a wealthy person who has lived all his life in wealth, decides to go himself as a 12th day 70 Brahmana to get this done so that next 1 year he can keep away from even Ramanuja Kaingarya. He is even able to relinquish that path to do that. So that is one example of how Koorathazhwan was able to dedicate himself. Then Bhagat Ramanuja wants to write Sri Bhashya. Sri Bhashyam is basically Ramanuja Bhashyam for Brahma Sutra, for which there is a huge library in Kashmir where a lot of material are available. So Ramanuja and Koorathazhwan, along with few other disciples, take a long walk all the way from Srirangam to Kashmir. And when they go there, the king is so pleased to see Ramanuja and offers the full access to the library and says, read whatever you want, take whatever you want. But the Pandits there at that time, they refused and they were not very happy. They said, okay, you can have access to the library, but you cannot take any book or leaflet. When you say book in those days, the leaflets outside. Two, you cannot take notes. Two conditions they give, but then you say you read as much you want inside the library. So Koorathazhwan and Bhagat Ramanuja keep reading and reading. At some stage, Brahma Sutra is so vast, so intricate. We have in a common parlance, we say, then a Brahma Sutra is what? It is the Brahma Sutra itself, which is so intricate and abstract and so deep in meaning and subject that after some time, Bhagat Ramanuja has to return. He is not very happy that he is not able to complete fully and they walk. At that time, Koorathazhwan says, I have memorized everything and I will tell you word by word everything. And verbatim, Koorathazhwan was able to memorize and reproduce the Brahma Sutra back based on which Ramanuja wrote the Sri Bhashyam. So that is another amazing ability of Koorathazhwan where he could memorize such kind of elephantine memory he has got, where such an abstract thing as Brahma Sutra that he is able to memorize and help Bhagavad Ramanuja in writing Sri Bhashyam. Sri Bhashyam is the what you call lifeline of a sister of the Sampradaya that Bhagavad Ramanuja gave us. So this is another aspect that we can say. Even today, if you go to any Perumal temple and if you see a Ramanuja Sannadhi there, if you see Ramanuja Sannadhi out there, you will find like Jaya Vijaya, two people outside the Sannadhi. In every Perumal Sannadhi, you'll have two people standing with their fingers like this and a gada. We call them Jaya Vijaya. In Ramanuja Sannadhi, you will find Koorathazhwan one side and Mudali Andan on the other side. Two direct Sishyas of Ramanuja were always with Ramanuja all the time. When Ramanuja went to Tirukkoshtiur to learn the Sampradayam and the mantra, Mahamantra from Tirukkoshti Nambi, he says, come alone. Ramanuja goes with Koorathazhwan and Mudaliandan. The Acharya says, I ordered you to come alone, but here you bring two people. He says, no, I haven't come with people, I've come with Dhanda Pavitram. Just as important for a sannyasi to have is Dandam and Pavitram. So he treats Koorathazhwan as Dandam and Mudaliandan as Pavitram. They are so intricate and important with Bhagavad Ramanuja's life. They're always together, and that is why you also find them in the Sannadhi also of Bhagavad Ramanuja. And when we have Satari in Perumal Sannadhi, we say Satari is Swami Nammalvar. We all know that. So when Satari is given in Ramanuja Sannadhi, it is not Swami Nammalvar. It is basically what we are talking about is Mudaliandan. So Satari in Ramanuja Sannadhi is Mudaliandan, while the Satari generally in Perumal Sannadhi is Swami Nammalvar. So that is the importance of Koorathazhwan and Mudaliandan in Bhagavad Ramanuja. So this Koorathazhwan then when based in Kaingaryam for Ramanuja, and is also in Kaingaryam in the Kovil Srirangam temple. So at some stage, they obviously wanted the progeny to happen. Typical to all of dedicated Sri Vaishnava, they won't ask Ranganatha and say blesses the children. So Ranganatha blesses two lovely children, sons for Koorathazhwan and Andal, and he names them as Parasara Bhattar and Vedavyasa Bhattar. So he even names his children based on our rishis and Maharishis, Parasara Bhattar and Vedavyasa Bhattar. So this is way the life was going. Everything was normal. Then Bhagavad Sankalpam, lot of things happen. There is a Chola king who was establishing the Shaivism ahead of anything else. He was demanding that all subjects become Shaivites and worship only Shiva. So that is what he was trying to push as an agenda. And he was trying to destroy all the Perumal temples, this and that. And his ministers tried to tell him, reason it out, nothing works. Then there was one minister in the court called Naluran. He says, hey, Chora, if you keep doing all this thing, nothing will change. You have Ramanuja there. Make Ramanuja say that Shiva is everything. All his followers will change overnight. Why do you even worry about doing all these things? Then he sends word, sends the soldiers to get Ramanuja. So Koorathazhwan gets wind of this happening. Periyanambi and Koorathazhwan. Periyanambi is Ramanuja's Acharya. He gets wind of such things are happening. So immediately they rush to the banks of Kaveri where Ramanujacharya is taking bath, and they take the kashayam of Ramanuja. Sannyasi's dress is kashayam, while Samsari's dress is a white dhoti. So Koorathazhwan leaves his white dhoti in the current, takes the kashayam in his, and then says, I am Ramanujan, goes with the soldiers. So even today, Vella Sathupudi happens for Ramanuja once every year to depict this particular Puranic event that happened, where Ramanuja wears white dhoti for a day, though he's a sannyasi, and Koorathazhwan takes the kashayam and goes to the king's court along with Periyanambi. So they go into debate, they try to explain, they Vendi, Vedangalodi, Virendi Kadiyarthan, like Periyarva did. So Koorathazhwan and Periyanambigal try to establish based on things, big reason the king will hear nothing. So he then finally says, in a very simple Sanskrit term, he says Shiva is everything. Then Koorathazhwan tries to pun that word and say there is Dronam, which is a measure. Shiva, if you in Sanskritam, multiple words have, words have multiple meanings. So there is use of Shiva as a measure. He says Dronam is a better measure and all that. Enraged, the king says, pluck your eyes. Koorathazhwan says, for me to have seen a papi like you, I will pluck my eyes myself, and then he plucks his own eyes. Periyanambigal also loses his eyesight because of the king's order. So, for the Sri Vaishnava Darsanam, Koorathazhwan gave him his Darisanam itself. So, Koorathazhwan is such an important person by his wealth and knowledge. He is able to dedicate himself to the maximum to give his own vision. And after all years, when Ramanuja comes to know of all these things, when they meet again after some time, because by this time what happens is Ramanuja goes off towards Melkote, Koorathazhwan and Periyanambigal lives in Srirangam. In the process, Periyanambigal attains Paramapadam. So Koorathazhwan is there, and after some years they meet. So Ramanujacharya says, hey, great soul, for an Atma like you, a dedicated person, knowledgeable person, how can such things happen? And here comes Koorathazhwan's answer, which will shake all of us. He says, probably I would have thought somebody's Urda Pundram, which is our Thirumazhisai, கொஞ்சம் கோணலா இருக்குன்னு நினைச்சிருப்பேன், அதான் கண்டுபிடித்து. ஸோ ஒரு ஊர்வ புன்றம் கோணலாக இருக்குன்னு நினைச்சாலே கண்ணு போயிடும்னா அது எவ்வளோ பெரிய பாவம்னு நினச்சிருந்தேங்க. ஆளாளுக்கு நம்ம கலடா பண்ணிருக்காங்க நம்மளெல்லாம். அவங்களுக்கு என்ன வரும்னு அவங்களுக்கு தான் தெரியும். ஸோ தட் இஸ் வாட் இஸ் ஹியூமிலிட்டி இஸ், தட் ஐ வுட் ஹவ் டேக்கன் thought somebody's Urda Pundram is slightly slanted, that my eyesight is gone, is what he said. So such was the greatness of Koorathazhwan. He gave us 5 brilliant works called Panchastavam, collectively called Panchastavam. His work is called Adimanastavam on Sri Rama, Vaikuntastavam on Sri Vaikuntam, Spiristavam on Tayar, and Varadarajastavam on Varadaraja Perumal, and Sundarabahustavam on the Thirumalurinjolai Alagar Koil Perumal, who is also called Sundarabahu. Alagiya Tholudayan is called Sundarabahu. So he is given Sundarabahustavam. So these 5 brilliant works of Koorathazhwan is always gives us a glimpse of what do you call knowledge into say Vaishnavism and worship. Plus, of course, innumerous Kainkaryam is done to Bhagavad Ramanuja. As I said, including Bhagavad Ramanuja giving us Sri Bhashyam, Koorathazhwan was instrumental. At the start, I always start with the Guru Parambara worship, which is Lakshmi Nada Samarambham, Nada Yamuna Madhyamam, Asmad Acharya Pariyandam, Vande Guru Parambara. This Thaniyan was also given by Koorathazhwan. Like this, Koorathazhwan's contribution is immense and fantastic, and it is important that we realize his Tirnakshatram is Thai month, Hastha Nakshatram. Why are we talking about him now? Is his Tirnakshatram is Thai Masam, Hastha Nakshatram, and we think about Koorathazhwan and his greatness and be blessed about it. So that is very important. And the scheme of things that I have mentioned every month is basically the star, the month and the star, because it has attachment to a specific acharya or an alvar. And it is also important as practicing Sanatana Dharma people that we know our what you call nakshatram more important than the date of birth, because I was casually mentioning to Aryu some time back that celebrating our date of birth, we are actually celebrating somebody's birthday. Our birthday is actually the Tamil Masam and the Nakshatra. So Thai Hastham is only, when I say Thai Hastham, it's Koorathazhwan. So each one of us have a month and a star for that, and it's important. We celebrate and we also ensure that next generation celebrates the Nakshatram rather than the date of birth, because our calendar, the 60 years that we're giving, why are we celebrating Shashti of the Burti? Because the cycle of 60 years that we have only 60 years as per Hindu calendar. Why couldn't I have celebrated 50? Why couldn't I have celebrated 40? Why is it 60? Because if I am born in a particular month, Varsham, Masam, Nakshatram, my one full cycle completes in the 60th year. That's why Shashti of the Burti becomes important for all of us. So that means we need to keep the trail and the tradition of Nakshatram and Masam constant at all times and recollect. Date of birth can be for colleagues, friends, and classmates, but within the family, within everybody, it's important that we remember the Hindu month and the star and ensure that the next generation follows it. So that's why all my next programs are clearly given only the month and star dates that we're going to celebrate. So that is Thai Hastam, which just passed recently. And interestingly, Kartigai Masam, Kartigai Nakshatram is the Thirumangai Alvar's Nakshatram. Thai Hastam is Koorathazhwan's Nakshatram. Interestingly, Kartigai to Thai Hastam, there is a holiday for reciting Divya Prabandham. You cannot recite between these two periods, but for the exceptions, during Margazhi, you will recite Tirupalli Echi and Tirupavai. And in Kovil, Pagalpathu, Rapathu, there will be some specific Divya Prabandham will be recited. Otherwise, this is a holiday period. So when Thirumangai Alvar's Tirunaksharam starts in Kartigai, you only give holiday, and when Thai Hastam happens for Koorathazhwan, again start reciting Pravandam. So Seva Kalam, everything can start with this from Thai Hastam. Again, Thai Hastam becomes important in that context. So this is in short about Koorathazhwan. We are going that Azhwan. It's very important that he is not Azhwar, and he doesn't come under the 12 Azhwars. Koorathazhwan is independent outside of the 12 Azhwars. Similarly, Thai Maham becomes another important Tirnakshatram of Thirumazhisai Azhwar. As the name says, the Azhwar was incarnated in Thirumazhisai. Thirumazhisai, we all know it's between Chennai and Kanchipuram. It is there in between a place, and a lovely Adi Jagannatha Perumal temple is there. And also, very strangely, around that place there is a Visa Anjaneer Koil, and he is more popular than Jagannatha Perumal temple there. People who want US visa still go there to the Anjaneer temple. But it is Adi Jagannatha temple and Thirumazhisai Azhwar Kshetram which is more relevant for us today. So Thirumazhisai Azhwar was born to Bhargava Muni and Kanakangi. The Munivar was performing his tapas. Suddenly, is getting attracted to Kanakangi, gets into Laukikam, and gets a baby. This baby is born like a pindam, no hands, no legs, one bound of flesh. So Bhargava Muni is so upset and annoyed and upset with himself that his tapas has gone waste. They just throw their pindam into a bush and walk away. On that side, there is two people who are coming, Thiruvalan and Pangechelvi. They are people who live in Thirumazhisai, who make their living by using canes. They make baskets and other things using canes. They say this pound of flesh and then they take it to the temple. And with the divine grace of Adi Jagannatha temple Perumal, that Pindam becomes a proper baby. So now this baby grows up as Thirumazhisai Alvar. The Thirumazhisai Alvar's avataram is seen as the avataram of Chakram. The Sudarshana Alvar himself was born as or incarnated as Thirumazhisai Alvar. If you recite his pasarams, you will find a unique, force in it. And the Pandits and Acharyas are attributed because he is Chakratha Alvar's Amsam, that his words are very strong and there is a lot more force in his words and all those things. That's how it is done. And Thirumazhisai Alvar has lived roughly around 4,500 to 4,700 years. He has transferred between two yugas towards the end of Kali Yuga, the end of Dwapara Yuga and starting of Kali Yuga. 4,500 to 4,700 years he was in this land. He has learnt almost all philosophies. He himself has written Sakyam Katrom, Samanam Katrom, Sankaranar Akyanul Araindom, Agamanul Araindom, like this he has written. That means he has dwelled himself in Sakyam, which is one of the Shanmadams, Samanam, which is currently Jainism, and Sankaranar Akya, Agamanul, Shaivism, deep into Araindom, he says. That's how Thirumazhisai was written. That he was deeply involved in learning the philosophy across various things, and that's why probably he needed so many years. And he was a devout Shiva Bhakt with the name of Shiva Vakyar for a long time. So he was performing his Kankariya to Lord Shiva. He was doing a lot of things. When at that time he has a debate with Peyarvar. Peyarvar also was around that time. So Peyarvar comes in the first three Alvars, Poigai, Budam, Peyarvar, the third of the first three Alvars. And within that, then you have at that time, they have a meeting, conversation, and all that. And learning from Peyarvar, uh, Thirumazhisai becomes a devout Perumal Bhaktar from Shiva Bhakta. So, this interesting episodes are there in Thirumazhisai life also. He has given us two brilliant works. Actually, gave us many works. Only two survived in those works. One is Nanmugan Tiruvandadi. It starts, the whole Tiruvandadi starts with Nanmugan as a name. So that's why it's called Nanmugan Tiruvandadi, which has got 96 pasurams. Then he is given Tiruchanda Viruttam, which is 120 pasurams. The Tiruchanda Viruttam, that says Viruttam is one type of a poem that you write in Tamil grammar, that when you recite, you actually end up singing Uraindu Maindu Mainduma, Urettu Mettu Ettuma, Uroruma Rumai. That's how it have written. So even you try to read without knowing anything, you'll end up singing. That's how the Viruttappa would have come from Thirumazhisai. Amazing pasarams is given. In fact, in Nanmugan Tiruvandadi, when he is even talking about, normally there is always a debate goes, as a practicing Sri Vaishnava, do you worship Saraswati or not? Because Saraswati is there as Brahma's wife, and we know the whole Kanchipuram's Perumal Avataram has a links to Saraswati and all, Saraswati refusing to come and all those things. And when she comes as a Vegavati to stop her as well, Perumal emerges there in Brahma's Velvi. So to answer that question, in Nanmugan Tiruvandadi, or rather, Acharyas have said that as an answer. Thirumazhisai didn't choose it as an answer though. So he has mentioned that Verpendru Vengadam Padineen, Vidaki Nirkindren, Nindru Ninikindren, Karkindra Nulvalil Pattiranda, Nulati Kelvanar, Kalvalil Pattiranden Khan. That is his Pasuram in Nanmugan Tirundadi, 40th Pasuram, where he's talking about Tirupati Perumal, Verpendru Vengadam Padineen, Verpa is Malay. So Verpendru Vengadam Padineen, Vidaki Nirkindren, Nindru Ninikindren, Karkindra Nool Valayil Pattirunda. Karkindra Nool is Vedam. Basically, all of us read one Nool, which is Vedam. Karkindra Nool Valayil Pattirunda, Nulati Kelvanar. So, who is Nulati? Again, he says Tayar is Nulati. Nulati is Kelvanar is Tirupati Perumal. So, that is why he's worshipping Perumal as who is the husband of who is knowledge personified person. So, Nulati. Tayar is Nolati, Nolati Kelvanar is Tirupati Perumal. So that's how he is also addressing this, saying Verpendra Vengadam Padineen, Vidaki Nirkindren, Nendu Ninikindren, Karkindra Nulvaliyal Pattirunda, Nulati Kelvanar, Kalvaliyal Pattirundan Khan. So this is one pasaram that he gives on Tirupati Perumal. So as he gives living, and his life is of very, very simple living, probably a small hut to himself, and he wears one Konipai equivalent and keeps thinking Perumal, comes up with pasarams and like that. So there obviously somebody will try to play mischief and all that. So there was one, what do you call, the Gudu Gudupakaran equivalent or somebody who had some special skills who called him for a fight or a competition. So apparently Thirumazhisai just picked some dirt in his body and then threw it on him, which fought with him and go. So this kind of things are there in Thirumazhisai Puranam. He had one disciple called Kanikannan, who was totally devout to Thirumazhisai. They were together performing their Kaingaryam in and around Kanchipuram, Thirumazhisai, they were there, and in a place called Thiruvakka or Or Irikkai is the place. Now it's called, if you actually go in the bus or if you see them, they'll say Orikkai. It was originally called Or Iravu Irikkai. We will talk about it. So in that place they were living, and they had an old maid lady who was doing the simple kaingaryam of cleaning that place where Azhwar was living. That place itself very small. She will just come, take a mop on the periki thodashi, she'll put column and go off. Very old lady. So Thirumazhisai Azhwar just quietly blessed her and says, I don't know what to give you and all that. You've been doing selfless kaingaryam. So let you live, kind of blessings he gives, and he suddenly turns into a beautiful damsel, a very young, beautiful damsel. And she's just continuing her work. And one evening, when the king comes around the Nagarvalam, he sees such a beautiful girl. He instantly offers her to marry, and she becomes the queen, marries the king. And years pass on. This lady seems to be younger and younger, but the king is becoming older and older. So he suddenly comes and says, "What is happening? Why is that you are so young all the time? And how is that I'm getting older?" He says, "No, I'm actually very old. Alvar blessed me and I became very young. So that is how I'm here. As whatever you see me as a beautiful girl, it's all because of Alvar and all that." So the king is so thrilled. He says, "I want to meet this Alvar. Can you get this Alvar to sing, bless me, or sing a song in my praise or something?" Then his minister said, "No, no, don't do all those things. Alvar only sings on Perumal. He doesn't do all those things." In fact, in one of the pasarams, Thirumazhisai Alvar has clearly mentioned, "Vaikundu Manidam Padom" is what very clearly he says. I will never sing a man. My words are only for Perumal and Tayar is what he says. So his ministers put some sense. Then somebody says, "Alvar is so great, you don't need, even Kanikandan can do a small song on you that can help you because he is a devout disciple of the Alvar. So he can be able to help you with a pasaram or some song in praise of you." So he sends word. So Kanikandan goes, because the king sent people, Kanikandan goes all the way to the palace. King says, "Okay, Kanikandan, sing a song on me." He says, "No, no. Alvar doesn't sing anybody other than Perumal and Tayar. I don't sing anybody other than my Alvar. So my Acharya and my Alvar is very important. I won't sing on all of you." The king tries to coax him, threaten him and all that. Kanikandan refuses to budge. So king says, "Okay, I'm banishing you. You are no more authorized to stay in my kingdom." He says, "No problem." He comes to the hut where Thirumazhisai Alvar is there. He tells what happened. And then and then he says, "I'm going now." So that is when Thirumazhisai says, "You are going. Then what will I do?" is what he is thinking. And then he is looking around and say, "Okay, if you are going, I will also come." So he goes there. Then as Kanikandan starts, Thirumazhisai starts behind him. He looks behind and sees Perumal there. He says, "Kanivandan Pogindran, Kamarupu Kachi Manivanna, Senna Pulide Nanum Pogindren, Nium Venaga Pai Surtikol." He says that. So Perumal immediately rolls the Adiseshan and starts walking behind him. So when Kanikandan in front, Alvar behind, Perumal is also walking behind Alvar. The three walk towards outside the kingdom. So this has got another relevance, beautiful relevance, a mirror image of something happened in Sri Ramayana, where in Ramayana, Rama walks in front, Sita in center, Lakshmana behind. Perumal, Tayar, and are equivalent, Jivatma equivalent or a disciple. Lakshmana is walking in that order. Here the mirror order is happening. The disciple is walking in front. Acharya, which is Sita equal, Sita is a Purusha Karatvam, who recommends us to Perumal. Similarly, Thirumazhisai Alvar, as an Acharya, recommends us to Perumal, is in the middle. Perumal, who is in the reverse. So the mirror image of what happened in Ramayana is now happening in Thirumazhisai Alvar in this place. This is greatly eulogized by Pandits and Acharyas. So as they go out of the village and the kingdom instantly becomes dark. Everybody feels the gloom because Perumal himself is gone. So the king realizes this mistake and then he asks the ministers what to do. He says, "No, you banish them, go bring them in." So if Perumal also gone, get Perumal back, everything will be normal. So the king rushes to the Perumal and says, "Forgive me, I made a mistake, please come back to the kingdom." He says, "I didn't come out because you asked me to go. Alvar asked me to come. So if you ask me to come back, I will come." So king goes to the Alvar. He says, "You didn't ask me to go. I went behind Kanikandan. So if Kanikandan returns, I will also come." So the king finally realizes his folly. He goes and begs his pardon with Kanikandan. Kanikandan says, "Okay, no problem. You've realized, we'll come back to the kingdom." And then says to Alvar, "We'll go back." So again, he sings another song. Kanivandan Pokorindan, Kamaru Kachi Manivanna, Senna Pulamude, Senna Pulamanam Pokorinde, Un Painaga Pai Vritukol. He says, Perumal says, "Okay, no problem." And then he listens to it. So even today, if you go to Thiruvekka, there Perumal is called Sonna Vannam Seida Perumal. Yar Sonna Vannam. He did the way Thirumazhisai Alvar asked him to do. He says, "Come," he just walked behind him. He just he stays there. To prove this point, you will see in that Kovil, Perumal will be lying down in a different direction than the normal direction of Adiseshan. Just to tell us that this has happened in real. So that Kshetram, Thiruvekka, which is very close to Chennai, near Kanchipuram, where Perumal is called Sonna Vannam Seida Perumal or Yatotta Kari in Sanskritam. So whatever we say, he will do as long as we say it with bhakti. Perumal always, like we saw in Kandanin Siruthambu, in Yashoda's thing, Perumal will always be bound by love, not by anything else. So when Yashoda Mata tries to bind Krishna, he's always bulging a little bit. There's a small piece of rope is always missing when she tries to tie Krishna around. So what is it? Is what Madhurakavi Alvar explains in Kandanin Siruthambu, Nun Siruthambu, Tambu, Siruthambu, Nun Siruthambu, Kandanin Siruthambu. That's the measure that it is there. As simple as that. Then finally Krishna says, why am I fighting with Yashoda? I should only give in, and he allows himself to be tied by Yashoda Mata. Kandinan Siruthaminal, Kattunna Panniya Perumayan. That's how the Pasuram goes. Kattunna Panniya. We can't tie him. He has to allow himself to be tied. Like this, the Sonnavannam say the Perumal allows himself to be obey as what Azhwar says because of Azhwar's love and bhakti. So that place is still there. You can have a lovely what do you call darshan of Perumal there. That's another interesting episode in Thirumazhisai Azhwar's life. And Thirumazhisai Azhwar and Kumbakonam Perumal, Sarangapani, are very good pals. So he goes all the way to Kumbakonam. Kumbakonam incidentally plays amazing role in the whole Prabandham, in the whole Vaishnavite lineage. When Prabandham was lost, the hint of something like Prabandham is there was only heard in Kumbakonam. From there, Nadamunigal went and then found out. It's a different thing. We'll talk about later in another episode later. So Kumbakonam plays a very important role, particularly Sarangapani Koil. So when Thirumazhisai Alvar goes all the way to Kumbakonam, Perumal gets excited. So when he normally, how do we go and worship any Perumal temple is, we go to the main sanctum at the last. We finish all the Sannadhis, do our Pradakshanam, and then go and have the Perumal's Darshanam towards the end. So when Alvar starts the Pradakshanam, the Perumal, the inside the sanctum starts looking in the direction where Alvar is doing Pradakshanam. So the butters there, oh, Alvar has come, is what they started think about it. So that is how the love for both of them is there. So when Perumal, Azhwar comes after all in those days, we're talking about walking all the way from Kanchipuram to Kumbakonam. He goes all the way and then he finds Perumal reclining posture. We know how he is in reclining posture in Kumbakonam. Then he sings, Nadanda Kalgal Nandavo, Nadunganyala Menamai, Idandamai Kulungavo, Vilangumal Varaichuram, Kadanda Kal Paranda, Kavirek Karek Kudendayul, Kidandavari Elindirind Vali கேசனே எழுந்திருந்து பேச வாழி கேசனே. He commands Perumal, நான் இங்கேருந்து வந்திருக்கேன், படுத்துட்டு இருக்கியா, எழுந்திருந்து பேசு வாழி கேசனே is what his Pasaram says. Now Perumal starts getting up because Azhwar has come and there's a love for Azhwar and Perumal there. Even today, you go have darshan of Ranganatha, reclining posture. You go have the Kabisthalam or other place in reclining posture, and then have darshan of Kumbakonam, Sarangapani, or Amudan as the reclining posture. You will find that Perumal is slightly getting up. It is called the Uddana Sayanam, the getting up, Uddana Sayanam. It is not Sayanam in 100%. You will feel Sarangapani is getting up because he is there. Azhwar asked him to get up. In the Vadi case, okay, I'm ready to get up is what Perumal shows himself. So with love, Perumal will do whatever you want. And for Thirumazhisai Azhwar, Perumal will always do anything because his love for Perumal is very different, and they do. So the term Piraan is given to Perumal. So Ramabiran, we say. When we say Piraan, that term is always mentioned as a supreme. We say Ramabiran, Kandabiran, and all that we say is because of Perumal, the term. But very interestingly, the names have got interchanged when it comes to Thirumazhisai Azhwar and Perumal is. Thirumazhisai Azhwar is called Thirumazhisai Piraan, and Kumbakonam Perumal is called Amudha Azhwan. So these terms will be in reverence when you discuss about that Kovil. You will not find this in Srirangam. Namperumal we don't call Nambiran or Namalwan like that. We call Namperumal only. But here so any other Azhwar we don't call them Piraan. It is a very unique relationship between Thirumazhisai Piraan and Aramud Azhwan, that as their friends, when there are two close friends, what they do? We exchange shirts, we probably exchange, we even share food and all that. So here they've changed their names, exchanged their names, where Piraan was given to Thirumazhisai Azhwar and Azhwan was given to Perumal. So Perumal became Aramud Azhwan, Thirumazhisai Azhwar became Thirumazhisai Piraan. And even today in Kumbakonam Kovil, the prasadam is first given to Thirumazhisai Piraan, then goes to Azhwan because he wants to have food after his friend has it. So that's how the tradition is maintained in terms of work. So Tiruchanda Viruttam and Nanmugam Tiruvandadi were the two works that Thirumazhisai Piraan gave us. Thirumazhisai Piraan was there to, in fact, he gave much more words which a lot of people don't are not able to find it. It just went, only these two came up as part of the fourth Nalayana Divya Prabandham. So as of today, that is what in this month's episode, we discussed two important people in the Sri Vaishnava lineage. One as an Acharya and as an epitome of how a disciple should be, which is Koorathazhwan, and an epitome of friendship between Perumal and Azhwar is Thirumazhisai Azhwar and Aramud Azhwan, where the kind of friendship is seen in the Pasurams, in the love, where he says, "எழுந்து பேசு வாழிகேசனே," he says, and then Perumal is ready to get up just because Azhwar says. I don't think Perumal did this even for Swami Nammalvar, who is the Kulapati of Sri Vaishnavism, but he is able to do this to Thirumazhisai Azhwar. The life of Thirumazhisai Azhwar, as you read, the kind of charitram, the events that has, is to make a man with immense power and everything. He sought nothing for himself. He lived an austere life and just in the thoughts and service of Perumal. That's why Perumal is able to do Sonna Vannam Seira Perumal, that he says, you can come, it starts coming, he says, stay, he stays there. So that the place where Perumal stayed in Tiruvakka for that night is called Or Iravu Irukkai, which got the current term when you go in bus and all that, they'll say Orikai, Orikai. Is the bus stop is there. That basically means Or Iravu Irukkai. One night Perumal stayed there. So that is why it's called Or Iravu Irukkai. Before then he came back to Tiruvakka. So this is a lot of interesting things between Pai Maham, which is the Thirumazhisai Azhwar's Thirunakshatram, and Pai Hastham, which is the Thirunakshatram of Koorathazhwan. Thank you for your time, and I'm open for questions.